This video is all about dumping, that is taking the data from an old school medium like a cartridge or in this case a disk and transferring it to a modern PC to preserve it, to protect it from degrading fragile media. But the thing is, personally, I've never really dumped anything that actually needed to be dumped to be preserved. I've never dumped anything in anger. A while ago I thought I'd maybe found a Famicom Disk game that hadn't already been dumped, but it turned out to be obscure but not unknown. But this time I think I might have found not one but two Famicom Disk games that seem to be undocumented. At last, this could be an angry dump. So let's take a look at these two discs. If you're not familiar with the Famicom Disk system, it was a floppy disk add-on for the Nintendo Famicom, the original Japanese NES. Exclusive to Japan, it made games available on disc basically, cheaper than cartridges, and you could rewrite them too. These two came together as a lot on eBay. The description said they were bootlegs and mentioned Balloon Fight, which wasn't an official Famicom Disk game, and that's what caught my attention at first, but neither of these labels say anything about Balloon Fight. This one says Crazy Kong, and that's definitely not a Famicom Disk game either, and this date of 2001 is very late too. The disk system was officially already very dead long before that. This disc says Kinniku Man Muscle Hack Match, again with a weird date 2002. There was an official Kinniku Man game on the Famicom Disk system based on the popular manga series. Maybe this is something to do with that or a hack of it given the name. I think we need to test these out to see what we've got, and first up, Crazy Kong. Let's stick it in. It always amazes me how quickly these disc games load. Not instant like a cartridge, but still pretty quick. And yeah, I think I can see what this might be. It looks like a hack of Donkey Kong, and not a particularly complex one at that. Different title screen and different colours seem to be about the extent of it. Donkey Kong was officially released on the Famicom Disk system, so a hack of it isn't that weird, but still, it's something I don't think I've seen documented anywhere. What's on the other side of the disc? You can have more than one game on these, by the way. Some games take up both sides of the disc, a lot don't. And this is Clue Clue Land, an early and strange release on the NES and Famicom in cartridge form. This is the slightly enhanced version that was released as the very last Famicom Disk game in 1992. I'm sure original copies of this are rare, but it's far from being undumped. Okay then, time to try the other disc, and once it's loaded, yeah, this definitely has to be a hack, and a modern one at that, given the date and the website on the title screen. This doesn't look anything like the Kinniku Man Famicom Disk game, though. It looks like it might be something else entirely. Something that I've not seen documented anywhere, so it could be interesting. What's on the other side of this disc? Well, that is Balloon Fight, as mentioned in the listing. This definitely isn't an official Famicom Disk game, as I said, and I was briefly excited to see this here, but, well, it turns out that this is a known prototype, one that has also been dumped, so nothing really new, but it is quite nice to have a working copy on disc. So, by the looks of things, this is a bootleg compilation of some interesting and unusual Famicom Disk games, with two of them that don't seem to be mentioned anywhere online. So, time to get angry, time to get dumping and see if I can find anything more about them. So to retrieve this data, I'm going to use Chris Cavell's tape dumper program. I have already made a video about this, so I won't go through the whole thing again, but I will link to that video if you do want to see the whole process in detail with some more explanation. This works on the NES or Famicom itself. You need to load it from a flash card and it injects itself into the system's RAM. To actually dump the disc, you need to rip the cartridge out without resetting, without turning the console off, and then you insert the disc adapter, and when you press the start button, the data on the disc is dumped. It's sent out via the standard audio output, and you can then record that on a PC and take the audio file and convert it into a disc image. It sounds unbelievably janky. You wouldn't think it works, but it does seem to work pretty well. It seems to be pretty reliable. And if you are wondering what the audio sounds like, I have been asked that question before. Well, it sounds something like this. Okay then, now we've got the disc images, let's take a look at the games in an emulator. It looks like Crazy Kong is definitely a hack of Donkey Kong, which is probably supposed to recreate Falcon's Crazy Kong arcade game. This was an officially licensed version of Donkey Kong for the arcade, not a bootleg. It was sanctioned by Nintendo because they couldn't keep up with demand for what was a massive hit. Called Crazy Kong because it repurposed surplus Crazy Climber arcade hardware, a game that came out the year before. A pretty common story in the Japanese arcade business at the time, and it's a bit odd, yes, slightly uncanny, but not the worst Donkey Kong clone you'll see by quite a long way. There is a Crazy Kong hack of Donkey Kong on romhacking.org, but that came out in 2024 and is for the later Donkey Kong Original Edition from 2010 for the Wii and the 3DS, which was a version of the NES game that featured all the original levels of the arcade version. This isn't that, it looks like another version of the same idea based on the Famicom Disk version of the game, which only has 3 levels, and I can't find anything about it online. It might actually be undumped. Next up, Kinnikuman Muscle Hack Match turns out to be a hack of Kinnikuman Muscle Tag Match, which was a cartridge-only release, not a disc game at all, from 1985, a super old-school wrestling game. Not terrible really, but it is pretty basic and bare bones. It came out in North America as Tag Team Muscle Match in 1986, and it's pretty typical of these old first-gen NES games. Not a lot going on, but sort of fun, and must have been actually one of the first games which used 4-way scrolling. The website listed on the title page is available via the Wayback Machine, and yeah, this is a hack of the cartridge game, and it provides an IPS patch so you can patch your own ROM. This is also mentioned on romhacking.net, and there it makes it a bit clearer that this is a hack that adds characters from another arc of the manga that the original didn't cover, but still no mention of a disc version though. A bit more digging reveals this Japanese blog post from 2010, which talks about unofficial ports of Famicom games to the disk system coming out of China. That was one of the reasons the Famicom Disk System never went that far, how easy it was to bootleg stuff like this. One of the games mentioned is Kinnikuman Muscle Tag Match, and it seems like blog author Murakan got a friend to make this disc version of the game. There's no download or anything, it doesn't make it available, it just talks about it with some screenshots. But converting Famicom cartridge ROMs to the disk system isn't an easy thing as far as I can tell though. It needs significant modification to the game's code, and if you don't have the source code, some reverse engineering and hacking will be needed too. It's not just a case of drag and drop the ROM file like a modern flash cart, there's way more to it, and many games will be extremely difficult to do. Kinnikuman Muscle Tag Match is an early game which will make this process easier, and yes, Nintendo did design the disk system so that existing games were relatively easy to port, but it's still going to be far from straightforward. Pretty nice then to find another disk system port. There was just not that many games made for the disk system, officially or unofficially. I can't find any other mention of the disc version of this game online anywhere in English or Japanese, and there's certainly no ROM image floating around. It looks like this is just not publicly available in the usual places that you'd find something like this. If anyone in the comments does know any better or knows about how games like this might be ported to the Famicom Disk System, well, do let me know. I mean, someone must have the ROM image of this somewhere to put it on a disc, but it really doesn't seem to be widely available. This is pretty clearly a modern release. Someone in Japan maybe is making these sorts of discs and selling them somewhere, and they do eventually filter through to Western eBay. There is a lot of Famicom Disk games on eBay, and I'd be willing to bet that a lot of them are modern rewritten discs like these ones. Usually they'll have well-known games on them. The last game video I made about Famicom Disk System. Discs features what was clearly a modern bootleg version of the rare All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros. Game. Official versions of that are hard to come by, but there is tons of bootleg versions though, and I'm sure other in-demand games are also rewritten onto other discs that originally contained less desirable games. That was the problem with the Famicom Disk System. Officially, you either bought games new or you had a game copied onto an existing disc after paying a fee at one of Nintendo's kiosks, but it was never that hard to rewrite them unofficially for free. Anyway, as I say, if you do know anything more about the origins of these games, do let me know in the comments. Maybe they're already out there and I just haven't found them. Yes, I have, for preservation's sake, put these up on the Internet Archive, and I will link to that below. I'll just have to hope that no one minds that much. So this is the end now. Thanks as always to my wonderful Patreons who do help me pay for stuff like this, and there is a link below if you too would like to join them. That would be fabulous. And I will say once again, thanks for watching, and goodbye.